I believe video games to be one of the most dangerous forms of entertainment, even more dangerous than porn. And in this video, I will explain to you why I believe so, and if you're struggling with video games, what can you do about it? And all of this comes from a guy, me, who there's been times in my life when I've played a lot of video games and I did not accomplish much. But then at other times in my life, I completely quit them. And that's when I accomplish a lot of things. Whether it's building businesses that make more than 6 figures a month, while also maintaining a good physique, and managing relationships and meeting people and all that cool stuff. So I will share with you the things that I've learned and what I did about it. But first of all, I have to preface this whole thing by who this video is for. This video is for those who already have a hunch that video games might be a problem in their lives. Because I can already see it from a mile away that some people might already be tense, ready to drop a dislike and a comment saying something like life is not just all about work and you have to relax sometimes, and video games can actually improve your cognitive function and they help you deal with stress, depression and anxiety. And oh look, there's another stupid self-improvement guru talking about whatever. So relax, okay? I've seen some videos online of other people talking about this topic and I read the comments in those videos and some of you guys are just like very aggressive and completely miss the point, okay? If you have your job, your routines, your friends, you play video games and you're happy and content with your life and you feel like there's nothing missing and video games are not a problem, then congrats. This video is just not for you. This video is for those who feel there is something off. For those of you who obsess over things, video games being one of them. Also for those of you who want to optimize every single element in their lives. And also for those of you who you've had some goals for a while, but they have not yet come to fruition. The kind of goal that requires 100% of your attention and focus. But you often find yourself not doing the things that you should be doing. There's projects, activities, hobbies, businesses, things that you want to do. But when the time comes, it's like you cannot find the energy or the motivation to actually sit down and go do it. You cannot focus and you just say like, oh, well, I'll do it tomorrow or next week or whenever. And instead you just go play video games or something. So let's get right into it. The first problem is that video games make everything else in life seem more boring, dull, and not as interesting. And this happens because the brain works by contrast. The brain has no absolute scales on how it measures things. Yes, for sure, you have some internal references, but external stimulus can easily shift your perception off completely. So to illustrate this, you may have heard of the classic experiment with the 3 glasses of water. So we have one glass right here with really hot water. We have another glass with lukewarm water, and then we have another one with cold water. So what happens is that if you put your left hand on the glass with hot water, and then you put your right hand on the glass with cold water, and then you move both hands to the glass in the middle. Your left hand that previously was with hot water, now it's going to perceive this glass as being cold. And your right hand that previously was with cold water, now it's going to perceive this glass as hot. Because as I said before, your brain and your perception of things works by contrast. And the exact same phenomenon happens when you're stimulating your brain with entertainment or work. So let's say, for example, we have another scale here of how much your brain enjoys doing activities in terms of difficulty and delayed gratification. And let's put in the middle the project that you're working on, whatever it is, your business or whatever goal you might have. This is in the middle, so it is somewhat fun because you're creating something that you want to create that maybe you're a little bit passionate about or you're somewhat curious. It is something that you're making on your own. But at the same time, it is work after all, so there might be some parts that are a little bit tedious. And we're gonna have the exact same dynamic as we had before. If you have been over here playing video games and overstimulating yourself, when you come back here and now you're trying to work on your business, your project, your goal, whatever it is, by contrast, this is gonna feel super boring and you will not want to do it. There's gonna be a lot of friction. But if instead you've been over here on a daily routine that does not have super high hits of overstimulation and you do activities that are rewarding after you put some significant effort into them, whether it's working out, reading books, or hobbies that teach you real life skills like painting, writing, playing an instrument, just doing things with your hands like wood carving, for example. And then after you do that, you come back here working on your project or business or goal, it is way more doable and you can easily start doing it. There's not gonna be that friction at the beginning. That part of hesitation before you begin to work completely disappears. Working on this will feel exactly like playing video games. And it can become one of the most fun and fulfilling things you can do on a daily basis. This is one thing that a lot of people don't understand about cutting out all of these fun things that you do in your life, like video games, porn, social media, is that at first it's very difficult and trying to live without them seems boring and dull and most people are just like, hey, I'm just trying to live a little. But what people don't understand is that after you get used to it for a while on not doing these things, your brain scales will reset. And eventually, I would say maybe after a solid 2 weeks, you can have the same amount of fun from reading a book or working on your business or whatever it is than you used to get from playing video games. It is difficult to get there. The first few days are pretty rough, but it's doable. The thing is that even when you get there, where a lot of people fail is that building and breaking habits is all about slippery slopes. Because once you get used to only doing the right activities, whatever activity is it that you're after, someday something will happen. Maybe a friend will be like, hey, let's do this thing that maybe it's not that good, whether it's playing video games or drinking alcohol or whatever it is. And then you think to yourself like, well, it's not a big deal. You know, I've been doing good for a while. It's only gonna be one day. I've been keeping this up for, I don't know, 3 weeks, 4 weeks. So yeah, let's do it. But no, you're gonna mess it all up. Look, I've gone down that route so many times. First, you indulge in it a little bit, but now that you've opened the gates, then you might do it again in a few days. And then it's gonna be every other day, and then every single day. And next thing you know, your entire system, for lack of a better word, is in shambles, and you went from here to down here. So do not compromise, okay? It all starts with one little mistake. There's this quote that I really like. I don't know if it's from Charlie Munger or Warren Buffett, but it says something along the lines of, the chains of habit are too weak to be felt until they are too strong to be broken, which kind of means the same thing. Like when you start to pick up bad habits, at the beginning they don't feel like much, but then you do it one time and then again and again and again and again, and same thing that I'm explaining right here. Next thing you know, you've messed it all up. And now it's very, very difficult to quit and go back to where you were before. And look, I know what a lot of people say, which is like, hey, but life is all about balance, right? Even you were talking about this scale right here. But think about this, if video games are truly a problem in your life, why balance it? Would you tell a heroin addict or a fentanyl addict, like, hey, it's all about balance, man? And I know some people will be like, no, but you cannot compare those two. They're two very different things. But is it really? For some people, not everybody, but for some people, video games and social media can be a true addiction, a harmful distraction that's rotting away their lives. So for them, it's not about balance, just cut it off. And you cutting off video games does not mean that then you're just gonna sit in a room all day like this and do nothing. The way you find balance is by replacing it with something else. That's what people don't understand about it's all about balance. You having balance in your life doesn't mean that you do a little bit of everything. Now, balance in life basically means that, for example, you need health, you need relationships, you need money. I would also say you need a spiritual part to your life. And then we also have hobbies, fun activities, recreation, and all of these things that I just listed right here. These are categories, and the categories in life is what must be in balance. Like, you need all of these things, but the activities that you choose to put inside of each of these categories, that's what you can choose. And that's what it doesn't need to be in balance. So for example, in hobbies, which is related to the thing that we're talking about right here, it doesn't mean that you need to do all the hobbies in the world. It just means that in life, you have to have some form of hobby or entertainment or fun activity, recreation, whatever. But that doesn't mean that you need video games and social media and porn and drugs and whatever. No, it means that you need some hobby. So what you can do is to choose a healthy hobby that will give you all the benefits of a hobby without wrecking you, like all the things that we were mentioning right here. As I mentioned before, things like painting, writing, playing an instrument, some kind of hobby that involves doing or creating something with your hands. Now, a lot of people love to point out cases like Elon Musk or Toby Luke, who they both supposedly play a lot of video games. And yes, that is true. But what you have to understand is that these are edge cases. These are people who can manage both. But hey, to be completely honest, I'm not neither of these two guys. And I can recognize that. I've tried it and I cannot pull it off. If it works for you and all the things that you want in life have not been compromised because of playing video games or whatever form of distraction or entertainment you have, congratulations. Then you keep doing you, but that is not my experience. When I dropped out of university and I went from having nothing to building a 6-figure per month business in less than 1 year, I was not playing video games. Which is kind of an interesting point, because if you're running your own business and there is no one above you and you have complete freedom on self-management and your schedules and when you have your free time and your work time and all of these things, that's when video games and these distractions are a true struggle. It is easier to manage them if you have a boss and a normal job and you have to be at the office at a certain specific time, because then you have clear set boundaries between work time and recreation time. But when you have your own business, it's very easy to get them all mixed up, because in a way, when you're on vacation, you're kind of always working. And when you're working, you also in a way are always on vacation. So that's that's why it's rough, because you can give yourself free time whenever you want, technically. So that's why it's trickier. Now, the reason why I said that video games are more dangerous than porn is that porn is temporary. You cannot watch porn all day. Maybe there's some freaks out there, I don't know, I'm sure someone's gonna say this, that they watch porn 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 hours a day. But that probably is like 0.01%. Because with porn, you actually have a physical cool down period. Like with sex, you orgasm, and then as a guy, there's some period of time in which you're cooling down, you're recovering. Now, yeah, with sex, if you're with somebody by your side, fairly quickly, you could get back into it. But with porn, because there's no one around you to remind you, you're just forced into this physical cool down. And while you're in cool down, you just forget about it. And you just go do other things, because you cannot just jump right back into it. And most likely, when you're in that cooldown period and you go do something else, you might just completely forget about this. And also, like, lust overall just goes down. There's a physical change inside of you. But the thing is that with video games, you can finish a game and then just go back into it again. Or you can just jump from one game to the next non-stop. You can play video games all day. And I used to do that when I was a kid and a teenager. So someone with a severe gaming addiction, I see that they could easily play more than 8 hours a day or 12 or something crazy like that. Now, one of the biggest issues that I have found with video games, and now we're getting into the interesting part, is how they mess up the background / subconscious activity happening inside your brain. So I'm sure you've heard countless stories of famous inventors or artists, scientists, business owners that had their greatest ideas when they were just doing something very mundane, like walking or cleaning dishes or taking a shower. And I've experienced the exact same thing in my life, both for business and creative tasks, because there was a point in my life in which I wrote a feature-length screenplay for a movie, and in the background in my brain, even when I was taking time off and I was doing something else, even though I wasn't consciously thinking about my script or my business, there was always a part of my brain that was working on it. And then out of the blue, maybe I was driving or walking or shopping or taking a shower, a genius idea would come to me and I would be like, wow, where did this come from? And that's the beauty of this part of the system that we have in our brain, which is an amazing problem-solving tool. But the thing is that you cannot directly tell it what to work on. It will choose by itself based on the activities that you've been investing time to. So if you've been playing video games, what this part of the brain will be doing is trying to solve all the problems that you were encountering in the video game. And that part of the brain, when you're doing something else, will be thinking about, oh, how do I complete this quest? How do I get that item? How do I level up? How do I complete this or that? Which is kind of sad, because your brain could actually be working on something more important, thinking something more meaningful about your life, like your health, your relationships, your business or your job, your spiritual life, other more healthy hobbies, things that would be a net positive for your growth and development. But no, sadly, instead, it's going to be just wasting its resources thinking on these things. Now, the thing that I've seen over and over again when I see other people talk about this subject and all the problems with video games, or I talk about them myself, is that a lot of people will say like, oh, well, but it cannot all be work, you know, you have to relax in life. But, you know, there's 2 points that I have to make about this. First of all, is that video games seem so fun and they allow you to relax because of the contrast bias that we were talking about before. Once you get used to not having video games in your life, things like reading books, going to the gym, hiking, real life hobbies like the ones I mentioned before, etc., all of these things, they can be as fun, as engaging, and as fulfilling as video games. In fact, they're gonna be more fun, more engaging, and more fulfilling. But the second point, which is actually the most important point, is that video games are also work. And this is something that a lot of people don't realize. So there's this thread that I saw on Twitter that I really like from this guy, Nick Dobos. I don't know if I'm pronouncing his name correctly. And it is quite a long thread, but he basically talks about this, like video games and all of these distractions. They are still work. What video games are is just another problem that you throw at your brain, but it's easier to solve than the problem you were working on before. So your brain loves it because it's like an easy puzzle. So at a mechanical level, the way this works is that there's 2 things happening when we're talking about stress relief. First of all, is that we have the main stressor, which would be whatever thing it is that you're trying to deal with life. Maybe it's a problem with your relationship, with your health, at work, with your business, like the main thing you would want. But because it's very difficult to deal with this, what you say is like, oh, I want to relax. I want to rest and distract myself, which is completely fine. I'm not saying it's not. So what you do is you distract yourself from this with a better stressor. So in this case, on the context of this video, what we're talking about, it is a video game, but it could be anything, you know, it could be social media or porn or whatever, which is an easier puzzle to solve. And then step number 2, what happens is that you solve this better stressor. Whatever challenge was thrown at you in that video game, you overcome it. And this triggers relaxation because your brain now accomplished something. That's all video games are doing. That's the literal process that's happening. And for a lot of people, video games are a form of escapism from real life problems. And the thing is that I've read arguments online that people say like, well, but video games help teenagers and adults to deal with anxiety and stress and depression. But no, look, what video games are doing is they're throwing the problem under the rug. The problem is still there. You're just choosing to look somewhere else and forget about it because you're tricking your brain's reward mechanism with this thing that I just explained right here by making it believe that it's actually accomplishing some stuff and making progress and advancing, which is quite fun because people go against this thing that I was saying like, no, but it's not all about growth and development and all of that. But why do you think that video games feel so good? Because that's what your brain thinks it's doing. Your brain thinks it's like, oh, I'm learning and I'm growing and I'm overcoming things, right? Because it's at that exact precise sweet spot that it's gonna feel good because it's a better stressor. It's an easy puzzle, quote unquote, easy puzzle. But in reality, what's happening is that you're making this whole thing worse because you have something that's making you sad. You throw it under the rug with video games or whatever distraction you have. And then slowly, this thing keeps growing and growing and growing and growing. And your brain keeps sending you more and more signals like, hey, this is wrong. Hey, this is wrong. So the sadness that you were feeling in the beginning, then it's gonna turn into anxiety and stress and even depression. Because at first you were just drowning these feelings right here. You're just putting them under the rug. So they become more and more and more intense because your brain is like, hey, why is this dude not doing anything about it? And that's why a lot of times with these distractions, you keep needing more and more and more. That's why some people start to play even more and more and more video games or more intense video games or go into other addictions. Because what they're trying to do is to hide those feelings that they don't like instead of just facing them straight away, which I know that it can be hard sometimes. But what you should be doing is to go and face that issue and try to fix it. And you can throw the argument like, well, man, but you cannot fix everything in life. And I'm like, okay, then go be a slave to your own emotions. If you go read ancient religious books, what do you think most of them are talking about? Go read the Bhagavad Gita. What do you think the Bhagavad Gita is about? About a literal war? No. The Bhagavad Gita is about you, about your higher self and your lower self, about the war that's going on in your own head. And the Bhagavad Gita teaches you how to win that war. But if you want to hide from the war, then yeah, by all means, go do it. But thousands of years ago, people were already talking about all of these things. We think that all of these problems and all of these issues are something new, but they're not. We've been talking about this for thousands of years. And we have the solutions, but hey, if you want to surrender, then yeah, for sure, go ahead. But it's not gonna be me. And look, if you want to relax, the best way to relax, because I'm not saying that you should not be relaxing, but the best way to relax is socializing. Go hang out with friends and talk, see their face. Go do real things. Go for a walk with them. I know that some people are like, no, well, but I socialize with my friends playing video games online. No, you have to meet in person. You have to see them. Your brain has evolved over millions of years to socialize by looking at other people's faces. Why do you think we have this psychological phenomenon as humans that makes us see faces everywhere? I don't know how to pronounce this, but pareidolia, which is basically the phenomenon that happens when we see faces where in fact there are no faces. That's how deeply wired we are as humans to see and recognize faces and facial patterns. And if you don't have any friends nearby or they're overseas, then go make some new friends. I have moved to countries in which I had zero friends when I moved there. And after a while of going out and talking to people, I had a pretty big social circle. So you can learn to be social. Everything in life is learnable. The most beautiful ability that we have as humans is the ability to learn anything. And look, no matter how good video games might feel to you, just ask yourself if you're getting what you want out of life. That's the big point at the end of the day. If you're getting what you want out of life and you're also playing video games, then awesome. But for a lot of people, it's not, because when they're playing video games, they know and they feel there's this part inside of them that knows, and it's telling them that there's some very, very important things in their lives that they want to do before they die. And video games are pushing them away from that. So be honest with yourself and make that decision. I think one reason why a lot of people don't dig into all of the problems with video games is because they're nowadays extremely socially acceptable. Kind of like alcohol, like no one looks at you weird anymore if you play a lot of video games. Porn is not socially acceptable. Okay, I mean, well, maybe in some areas it's starting to be, but it's not. So with video games, because it is, the standards of what is normal and what is not normal are changing a lot. And things that maybe are actually not that good for you are starting to get normalized. Now, one last point. Does this mean that you should never, ever again in your life play video games? First of all, it's up to you to decide the severity of the problem. And second of all, in life, there are seasons. If you're in a season right now in your life where you truly need to focus and you need to put all your attention on something that's very, very important, that has some level of urgency to it, then yes, don't play video games. Completely quit them for a long while. But hey, if you're in a season in your life where you've already been working a lot and you're good and you have all the pillars in life, health, wealth, relationships, spirituality, and you think that you can manage it and you're kind of like these guys, then yeah, for sure, go do it. Just beware that it might turn into a slippery slope. And look, there's a lot more to be said about all these topics on video games. There's so many things I did not cover, but I'm not going to lay out all the arguments in this single video or it would turn into a 2, 3, 4 hour thing. If this video does well, I already know all the arguments that will be thrown against the things that I'm saying. This is a topic that I spent many years on, but I don't want to over-explain it all because most of the things that I explain in this video are enough for you to start to understand the overall logic behind all of this. This is just a gentle nudge for some people to start to consider some of these things and start to recognize these patterns. But if after all the things that I explain right here, if you still don't get it, it doesn't matter now if I address this point or that point or like, hey, but what about this? No, but you're not keeping in mind that thing, whatever. It doesn't matter. You wouldn't get it anyway, so it makes no sense to over-explain everything. The problem with talking negatively about anything nowadays is that people build their identities based on the things that they like. So for some people, video games are a big chunk of their identity. So if you attack video games, they think that you're attacking them. But no, I'm not attacking them. I am attacking video games. Same thing when I made a video talking about the dangers of music, because some music nowadays is extremely toxic. For example, some of this modern mumble rap that talks very openly about sex and violence. It's very toxic and very bad for your brain for many reasons that we don't have to get into right now. But again, if I suggest the idea that some music might be bad, people just completely lose their heads. And people are so low IQ that they cannot extrapolate ideas. They can only think in extremes. Like in this video, I've repeated so many times over and over again who this video is for, but I'm sure there's still gonna be people who don't get it. And I think this is actually the root cause and the source of most of the problems that we have in the modern world, that people cannot see the gray area in the middle. They can only see the extremes of any side. And they cannot be like, oh, well, okay, there's this concept, there's this idea that might apply to other people, but maybe it doesn't apply to me, and it doesn't matter if this is part of my identity or something that I like. I'm not gonna be offended. Like a lot of people, I would say the majority of people nowadays, it seems like they cannot do that. And they always take everything so personally, and they use a lot of ad hominems to discredit people. So look, overall, take what is useful, take the things that you like, discard what is not, and understand that everybody is different and needs different solutions. So hopefully this video was useful for you. If it was, go watch some of my other videos, subscribe to the channel, and I will see you very soon. Take care. Peace.